The killing of George Floyd has brought a torrent of pain and anguish to our entire city, to our entire nation, and has especially impacted our Black community. And we recognize that none of this happens in a vacuum. And it is righteous to vent that pain and anguish in the form of peaceful protest. But what happened last night was neither peaceful nor was it a form of protest that effectively moves us forward. Every person in every neighborhood in our entire city deserves to feel safe. What transpired yesterday does not bring us closer to safety. It does not bring us closer to advancing racial justice in the way that we all want. Those who came downtown last night for righteous reasons, out of concern for our community, were used. They were used as cover by people with different aims. Many of our businesses that had already been pushed to the brink by COVID-19 and the unrest following the killing of George Floyd, were even further impacted. Our neighborhoods have endured an extraordinary amount of pain already this year. We will not abide by lawlessness. We will not tolerate deliberate and malicious destruction of our neighborhood and of our businesses. So for the safety and the security of our residents, we are again moving forward with a citywide curfew to begin tonight at 8 p.m. and will go until tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Additionally, very early this morning, I authored an additional emergency regulation authorizing public and private property to be secured against damage in the form of boarding. That would be boarding windows, boarding doors, and other exposed parts. And our police department and outside contractors have already begun moving forward on that. Chief Arredondo will be able to discuss some of those expectations of that regulation further in just a bit. I want to thank our police, our firefighters, and a host of city staff that stepped up to help stabilize our city. Likewise, we're grateful for the extraordinary community partners that came downtown last night to tell the truth, to get accurate information out there into the public, and I also want to thank the media for their work in ensuring that the public had accurate information as well. So let's restore order. Let's restore peace. That is my ask of everyone tonight. And demonstrate your resolve. Affirm your fidelity to our community and this city. Stay in, stay safe, and please help us all bring about peace. That is what we're asking for. I'll now turn it over to Councilmember Lisa Goodman, who represents much of the ward where the civil unrest took place last night. Councilmember.
Good morning. This is a really difficult place for me to be with no notes or coaching on what to say to the media. So I'm just going to do a few things. First of all, I want to thank the mayor for your very decisive leadership in standing up for the citizens of the city of Minneapolis. And I want to thank our chief and reiterate that I stand by you. Physically, I stand by you professionally, and I am proud that you're our chief. I'm here today to give voice to the people who work and live downtown, who care so much about our city and are horrified by the violence that they have had to witness from the windows of their homes. They are horrified about the fact that minority-owned businesses were blatantly targeted and victimized by this violence last night. Right in the corner of a neighborhood where I used to live, Loring Park, the Lotus restaurant, family-owned for 50 years, was destroyed. And the owner said that when they broke into his business, the very first thing they did was try to tear down a picture of his family that was on the wall that represented generations of work at the Lotus to bring their family to a point where they could own a business in our city. Next door, Rainbow Road, a store that sells GLBTQ paraphernalia and signs and shirts, an institution in our community, looted and vandalized. And for what? None of this did anything to advance racial justice in our city. Small minority-owned businesses were targeted. There was no regard for the workers and the people that have put their lifeblood into these businesses. Downtown is not just about tall towers and Fortune 500 companies. Downtown is about 50,000 people who we have recruited to live here. We've worked to build a city so that people could feel comfortable living here. Downtown has affordable housing. It has shelter, it has services, a hospital, and all of the things that make a community great. Our diverse downtown was treated as a victim last night. And we have to remember who the victims are here. These are the residents of downtown, the workers in these businesses, the owners of small businesses who have been treated by lawless individuals intent on committing crime for no reason that stands for the memory of George Floyd. Quite frankly, I am disgusted, and my constituents are disgusted. They believe that there needs to be changes in the city as it pertains to police activities. And they believe there is systemic racism, and so do I. But this is not the way to solve that problem, and we cannot tolerate this in the city any longer. It would take a lot for me to come to a press conference and speak out. In 20 years, I've probably attended 5 press conferences. But we are at a turning point with our downtown where we don't realize that we are ripping away at the whole fabric of the city by this lawless behavior, and we should not stand for it anymore. So I appreciate you taking the time to hear my voice today, and I appreciate everything the chief and all of the city officials are doing to stand up for our residents, our business owners, and all of those workers who are currently employed but might not be if there's more violence going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor Frey, for your leadership. Councilmember Goodman, thank you so very much. And to our other city enterprise department leaders, thank you so very much. Last night, we experienced compounded trauma in our city. It did not only impact downtown, which was the key center point of it, but it also, in the early hours, spilled into our 5th precinct in southwest Minneapolis. As I have said along with the mayor, we are no longer going to tolerate lawlessness. We can no longer, as Councilmember Goodman said, we can no longer have productive, real, genuine, and authentic conversations and actions about race relations, about race and policing, which I absolutely will continue to have and speak out on. We can't have that when we have individuals who will try to hijack the narrative. And it's shameful that anyone would ever try to equate the actions last night with Mr. George Floyd, because it is not. These individuals were not peacefully protesting or assembling. They were looting, they were creating vandalism, they were burglarizing, trying to set buildings ablaze. I will not tolerate that. I want to thank all of our men and women of the Minneapolis Police Department who, again, through their service, delivering that service through a pandemic, an increase in violent crime. They've been doing an exceptional job, so I want to thank them. I also need to thank the local, state, and federal law enforcement partners that we had last night. Credit to Commissioner Harrington for his assets that he provided for us, Chief Axel of the St. Paul Police Department, Hennepin County Sheriff Hutchinson, Chief Clark from the U of M PD. Also, I want to thank Colonel Menke from the Minnesota National Guard for their assistance. I know I'm probably forgetting a few others, but we will continue to have a robust presence in our city, not just downtown, but in our entire city this evening, along with the Mayor Frey's curfew order. But I want to stress again, we cannot tolerate this any longer. I have said that if we're silent, we can be complicit. And that means where there are egregious conduct within the police department, I have to call that out. But our communities also have to call out when individuals are causing harm. We can no longer remain silent. So that has to occur. I just want to give a briefing. These numbers are not up to date, but there were approximately 50 arrests last night. They range from probable cause or felony riot, probable cause felony burglary, obstruction charges. Of those arrests, there was at least a 29% were residents of St. Paul, another 25% were residents of Minneapolis. We had a couple that were from out of state, and another 43% were from other Minnesota cities. As noted, we had businesses that were damaged. And so we do have shifts that are working closely with our city's regulatory services to make sure that board up occurs. We will continue to have looting details. National Guard soldiers are in place now. We will have a presence again around the entire city. I will continue to be in constant communication with Mayor Frey to give him updates. Sadly, 2 of my officers were injured last night. One could have been very seriously, significantly injured had it not been for the protective helmet that he was wearing. We can't have that. And so I wish them both speedy recoveries. I also want to thank again the great work of our fire department, Chief Frito, under his leadership, Assistant Chief Tyner, and of course our regulatory services folks. But you will see a presence out there, but we have to turn the tide here in our city. And I'm determined that we do that. We have to restore peace and order, and I'm hopeful and optimistic that we will do that. I also just want to acknowledge the thanks to our community stakeholders and groups that were out there last night trying to be violence interrupters, who did their best to try to quell the situation out there and direct people out of downtown. So with that, Mayor, thank you. Chief Riddle.
Good morning. I too would like to, first of all, start by thanking Mayor Frey, Councilmember Goodman for your leadership, and other department heads who were here, and certainly Chief Arredondo for their support that the law enforcement community, his officers, the other law enforcement communities that were in here assisting you and us last night to be able to effectively respond. I really appreciate the support. Last night we had a total of 4 fires. One was in the pub downtown on 11th Street, and then on Nicollet Avenue, I should say, and then we had another fire shortly after that in the Discount Tire area on Emerson and Lake Street. We had another fire later on that evening. Our 3rd fire was in the Walgreens located on 43rd and Nicollet, and then early this morning we had our 4th fire at the China Walk. Still unsure if that was related to the civil unrest or not that we had last night. I will say that we have been, last night we were fully supported, which I truly appreciate. We were able to effectively respond in to all those reported fires that we had. Our crews did an excellent job of knocking down those fires that we had last night, trying to protect and as much of the structure we had. Most of the fires we had last night were all contained into the room or building of origin. All those buildings are still standing today. They suffered some damage from the looting and the forcing of entry into the structures, but they are standing today, which we are very proud of. I'm very proud of my firefighters, the effort they put in again last night, much like the effort they put in back in May. I'm very proud of them. I'm proud of all the work they do, and that's really all I have to say right now. Tonight we are going to prepare, working very closely with our law enforcement partners, especially Chief Arredondo, his staff, and we will staff up again and we'll prepare for what may happen tonight. We are going to work very closely with all of our response partners to make sure that we can effectively respond if needed to. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Ruff?
Good morning. My name is Mark Ruff, M-A-R-K-R-U-F-F. I am the city coordinator for the city. Want to bring a few words about the effort from the rest of the enterprise. Also here this morning is, when I say the rest of the enterprise, the rest of the city staff and department heads. Also with me is Robin Hutchinson, the Director of Public Works. We are undertaking an assessment of the damage. It's a multi-department effort, including our assessor's office, community planning, economic development, and regulatory services involved as well. Those staff will also be reaching out individually to business owners to offer the supports as we have in the other cases of civil unrest. There's no city property damage that we are aware of significance associated with this, and so we are focused on community at this point in time and working diligently, as we have been over the last several weeks, to be as user-friendly as we can be in working with businesses, not just about the immediate assessment of damage, but also working through the regulatory processes and the fee structures to minimize the impact on businesses and to encourage them as much as possible to reinvest within the city of Minneapolis. I do want to emphasize, as you've heard already, the very close working relationship we have among all of our departments and supporting each other and working in communication with the businesses. As you are aware, that can range everything from trying to reduce property taxes for those businesses that were damaged more than 50% to bringing loan funds and the other Minneapolis Forward and Community Now efforts that are spearheaded by the mayor and our elected officials. Thank you.
We'll open it up to any questions. Yes, sir.
Mayor, do you think the release of the video last night had the effect you thought it would? There obviously still was a lot of looting and so forth. Do you feel like it was less because of that, or were you surprised by the amount of destruction that happened even after releasing that video?
So the question was regarding the release of the video, and first let me state that I fully understand the pain that can move forth from watching a video, especially from family members and those that were close to the individual. The video itself was extremely disturbing, and we also felt strongly that in that moment it was important to both be transparent as well as to quell some of the widespread rumor that we were seeing. In an officer-involved shooting incident, in a critical incident of that form, there are exceptions under state law that allow for the release of video footage to quell widespread unrest and or rumor. And had it been that circumstance, this would have fallen within that exception. I do feel strongly that this was the right decision to move forward with a release of video and simultaneously understand the pain that it causes. There's a lot of distrust right now in community, and we recognize that. And so it can't simply be my word or the chief's word or our PIO's word. We need to be honest.
So do you think it had the effect that you thought it would or not?
You never know exactly what to expect under these situations, but certainly if there was a presumption that this was in fact an officer-involved shooting, then the damage could have been far worse.
Mayor, this was a very swift response by the city and the state compared to the riots we saw a few months ago. Can you talk about the differences here, and if the chief can comment as well on the timeline?
The question was any differences between both the response as well as the circumstances between 3 months ago and then last night. First off, it's apples to oranges in so many respects. The numbers that we saw last night were not even remotely close to the numbers that we saw 3 months ago, not even in the same league. Many, many, many times the size of what we saw last night was 3 months ago. And yes, we've been in constant communication, not just internally with our Minneapolis Police Department, but also the state, and we're very appreciative of the resources that we received last night, and very appreciative of the resources that we anticipate receiving throughout the day and going into tonight as well.
Chief, any sense of the folks who were arrested last night? Do you have a sense of how many people were downtown as a part of some other event? I understand there were other organized demonstrations earlier in different parts of the city, or were these people who just were maybe came downtown after they saw some of the unrest and to take the opportunity to commit some of these crimes? Can you help us understand who some of these people are?
Yeah, the information that I've received from our leadership over at the First Precinct, it has been a mixture. There were certainly those folks who had already been downtown and congregating along Nicollet Avenue. But we had also heard reports that others, once the disinformation came out through social media, decided to come into downtown Minneapolis. And so one of the tactical strategies we did were to work with our State Patrol Colonel Langer to shut off access to make sure that when we were trying to make the move to clear out downtown, that we were not allowing more people to come down to, there was information out there about come down to loot and all of that, and so we wanted to really prevent that from happening. So preliminarily, that was a mixture of two different types of crowds that were down there, some that had already been there and some that were coming down to partake in the unlawfulness. So.
Will there be
on that traffic front, was there seemed like, I wasn't in it, so forgive me, but just watching some of it, did seem there was still a fair amount of vehicular traffic that might have made it difficult to kind of push people away. In hindsight, could there have been a better way to shut down some of those streets into the Nicollet Mall specific area?
Yeah, we were certainly learning. One of the things that was a little bit different from the civil unrest that we experienced back in May was it was a larger area. Downtown was a little bit different. We're learning from that because of the construction, quite frankly, and groups started to splinter off on foot, and it made it a little bit difficult for some of our vehicles, but we were able to adapt to that as the evening went on, and so we've got plans in place to address that. Yeah.
Can you talk about the thought behind having the National Guard and State Patrol still out there today, and why you're posturing that way, and what you're expecting?
So one of the things that the mayor and I have been in constant conversation even since the aftermath after May 25th was to just really make sure that we're having as best of a strategy, a public safety strategy moving forward. There will still be flashpoints in our city. And so we're making sure that we're prepared. One of the questions that came about was why was the response as quick as it was? I have been in constant leadership meetings with all of those other partners I mentioned since May 25th, and we actually had a briefing in the morning hours yesterday. So we have been planning, and so the mobilization, when the mayor called it up, it was able to happen much quicker, and so that's been very helpful. The communication with all of our great partners, public safety, has been very helpful.
Can you tell us more about what tonight's holds then? Will there be National Guard troops out there again, and will traffic be blocked on 394 again, or what's tonight going to be like?
Yes, after me and the mayor's briefing this morning, we will, in accordance with his curfew, there's National Guards in place now. There will be more this evening. Our main goal, again, and our mission is for peace and order. You heard a very compassionate and very real plea from Councilmember Goodman. We can't allow our folks to have compounded trauma, our business owners, our residents, and so we are going to make sure that there's a visible presence. We are going to have looting details, and most importantly, we're going to hold people accountable. And so, again, I mentioned the arrest numbers earlier today, and we're urging people right now, if you are planning on coming into any part of our city, not just downtown, but any part of our city, to create any sort of criminal behavior or activities, you will be held accountable and arrested. So.
Chief, how quickly did you realize yesterday, I was there right at the beginning of that scene could get out of hand? How quickly did that misinformation, did you realize, I mean, you saturated that area, so there must have been some sense we had trouble down there, but I'm just curious, kind of on the tick-tock clock, how quickly did you know there was an issue developing on the Nicollet Mall?
Yeah, within minutes. Me and the mayor had a conversation. We know that there is certainly, and one of the things that I will have to continue to be focused on is building the trust up, but we know there's distrust right now in certain parts of our community. We know that it's been only a few days since Kenosha. As soon as we started hearing the first rumblings that this was an officer-involved shooting, we needed to get that information out, and I strongly support and agree with the mayor. I have immense sensitivity and respect for the family that was involved, for the person who self-inflicted gunshot wound, but there would have been probably a lot greater destruction and chaos had we let that rumor of an officer-involved shooting go. And so the mayor had to balance that, and I think he made the right decision to release the video.
Chief, I would like to thank you and the mayor for releasing that video and that footage. And a lot of people in the community had misinformed information, but as soon as myself and a lot of more organizers had got the information expeditiously, we put it out there, and we just feel sorry, and we feel like some of the younger generation just got just got into their feelings and just wanted to loot. And we tried to do everything we could to stop it. And a lot of mace that was being put out there and projected by some of the peace officers was basically totally uncalled for. So we just tried to put the fire out, but some children not only children, grown people were out there looting as well. So we just did the best that we could.
And I want to also say this again, too, that during the mayor's conversation with me, we weighed those conversations about the importance of putting that video out and the impact it would have. So within 90 minutes, getting that video out there, we thought it was important. We also were making collectively calls out to our community leaders to explain the situation. And thank you for your help in I know we had people down there talking to those young people and explaining, we have the video. We wish it would have prevented some of that, but moving forward and in terms of the decisions I had to make about gas, I will always be reviewing that. But one thing for sure that will prevent me from ever having to make the call to use gas: don't commit criminal activity down there. Go home. We were urging folks to go home, and so we'll continue to do that. But I want to thank you for your leadership out there.
Thank you.
Chief, were either of the officers that were injured, were they hospitalized?
Yes, both were taken to the hospital after being assessed, being treated. They were released back home. But there is a video floating out there, if you haven't seen it, of one of my sergeants who was struck in the head, and had he not had his helmet on, it could have been a lot worse. So.
We'll probably just have time for one more question, man. So you mentioned a couple times, Chief, that lawlessness will not be tolerated anymore. And I know that there's a lot of people that feel like there has been lawlessness that's been tolerated. What do you think about that, and where is that coming from?
Well, let me clarify. We will never tolerate lawlessness. In the events that we can go in and move in and effectively and safely make arrests, we will. If it's referencing to the week of May 25th, there were situations that we really, if we didn't have the resources to go in there and effectively make it, there were decisions that I had to personally make where it was preservation of life or property that had to be damaged. That was a decision I had to make. And so I will always, that preservation of life is going to be key. But let me clarify, we will not tolerate any lawlessness. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.